Welcome back to the Eight Man Breakdowns podcast. This is where we discuss all phases of the game of football, including philosophy, play concepts, questions, and more. So joining me today is Coach Ben Justus. Coach Justus is the offensive coordinator at Velma-Alma High School in Velma, Oklahoma. Coach Justus has 11 total years of coaching experience, including the last 4 years in the eight-man game. During his time at Thomas Fay Custer, he was a part of teams that only lost 3 total games in 3 years and won the state championship in 2014. He took the job as OC at Velma in 2018, and they began their transition into eight-man in 2019. At that time, Velma was coming off an 0-9 season, and since coming to Velma, Coach Justus has helped lead the Comets to 3 consecutive district titles, including 2 trips to the quarterfinals and a run to the semifinals last season. Well, Coach, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So, like always, I start with a little background information. So just start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your high school playing days and how you got into coaching football.
Yeah, so whenever I was in school, I played for my dad, and he was my coach the whole time, and we always had some decent success, and he was a big wing T guy, and so there's a lot of that that's still in my offense today. And then after that, when I went to college, I knew I wanted to coach, and there was a local school that was right there, about 10 miles from where I was going to school at. And my dad knew the head coach there, and I asked him, "Hey, you think I can get on over there?" And he said, "Well, I'll give them a call." And so he gave them a call, and that school's Thomas Fay Custer, and they're in one of the most historic 11-man programs in Oklahoma, especially in small schools. And so I went there and learned a ton. That's where I really had my first involvement with being around the spread offense and no huddle. We weren't up tempo, but it was still no huddle. It was the first time to be around that, and learned a ton of great things there from Coach Ward, who's the head coach there, and he's still there. And when I was there, we only lost 3 ball games in 3 years. And one of those was a state champion, and then the other 2 losses were to state runner-ups. And then my last year there, we won a state championship in 2014. And then after that, I graduated college, and so I didn't hang around for a 4th year there. I left and I went to Ringling, where I coached with my dad for 3 years. And then after that, I left and went to Velma, where I became the offensive coordinator there. And I just finished my 5th year there. My first year there, we were 11-man, and the year before I got there, they were still 11-man, and they went 0-5, and they had to forfeit the last 5 games because they didn't have enough kids. And so when I got there, our only goal was to finish the season. It wasn't to win a game, nothing. It was just finish the season. And we went 0-9. And right before the last game, they announced that we were going to switch to 8-man, and which was the best thing for our program, because after that we've had a ton of success. The first year we played an independent schedule, and we weren't eligible for playoffs, and we went 9-0. And then the next 3 years we've been district championship, won a district championship 3 years in a row. Made it to the quarterfinals 2 of those years, and then this year we made it to the semifinals. And unfortunately had a couple kids that got hurt right before that game. And if I think we have those kids, I think we might beat those guys and be in the state championship. So things are looking way up compared to where they were when I first got to Velma.
So you played for your dad in high school. He was kind of a wing T guy. So you played 11-man in high school?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
I played 11-man in high school.
And then you get to experience the spread offense there at Thomas Fay Custer, and 3 losses in 3 years. That kind of influenced you into kind of some of the offensive concepts that you do today, would you say?
I think so. A lot of how I structure things are real similar to how we structured them at Thomas. And so I would say the misdirection part of our offense is more of my dad's wing T stuff, but procedurally about how we go about things is more of how we did things at Thomas.
So did that kind of spark the change there? Like going to 8-man, did you get more kids involved and start winning early on? Is that how you got to where you're at now?
Well, as soon as we made the change, we immediately had better numbers coming out, and I mean, it was like an overnight success story. Now, I'm not going to lie. That first year, the 9 teams we played were not very good, and so, but which was good for us. We needed to win because it had been so long. I mean, they hadn't won a football game in 2 years, and so those kids had just been beat up on forever. And so to finally, have some taste of success and then quite a bit of it that season really, really rolled over into that next year when we could, we were eligible for playoffs and started building a culture of success and good things. And so it wasn't an easy deal for us to go 8-man. The school had fought it for a long time because when they were in, about 10 years back or so, when they were still 11-man, it wasn't uncommon for them to have 16 kids out for football. But all 16 of those dudes could absolutely play, and they'd still go win games. And so when we got there, it was, hey, we think we can still win with the numbers that we got. But the smallest 11-man class in Oklahoma had changed so much from that point in time. Whenever we became 8-man, all the schools that we were playing were the schools that they were previously playing in 11-man, but they had dropped. And so really what we were playing at the end of that 11-man point was we were playing the large 11-man teams in that small classification instead of playing the smaller schools like they had been playing because they had all dropped down to 8-man.
You guys were successful very early in 8-man, and like you said, maybe that wasn't the toughest opponents, but that's definitely going to invite more kids out. So talking about that, you said in previous years you had 16 even on 11-man teams, but that's what we had, 16. How many did you guys have out this year?
I think this year we had about 30. We're graduating quite a few. We're going to be lower 20s this year, but we've been around that 25 to 30 range the last few years since we've been in 8-man. This will probably be our smallest team. Now, we still have quite a few talented guys. Just the depth is not as good as what it used to be.
And I obviously don't know much about Oklahoma 8-man teams and how many there are and all that. How many are there? What's it look like in Oklahoma? Do you guys have divisions and what is there a cutoff for
Yeah, so they only allow 80 schools total. And then it's 40, the bigger 48 are in Class B, and the smaller 32 are in Class C. Now, not this year, but the next year, they're actually going to take Class B and divide it up into Division One and Division Two, where there's the larger half of Class B and the smaller half of Class B that'll have their own state championships, which I think is going to be way beneficial, at least for us. It's just there's too big of a difference between the smallest schools and the larger schools. We're going to be in that larger school, but I still think it's a good change. Part of it that's going to be with it. We have 5 rounds of playoffs in Class B right now. Where Class C, having fewer schools, they have 4 rounds, which I think that's a better number. Five rounds is just a lot of games. When you're trying to play 15 of them and you're trying to keep kids healthy, especially in those late games that, a lot of times you're playing people that are pretty good and they're physical. And, that was kind of something that we ran into this year. Like I said earlier, we got in that quarterfinal game and we lost 2 kids. If we're in Class C, well, the next week we're at least playing in the state championship and we get to, at least bring home a silver ball. Where in Class B you're just moving on to the semifinals, and so it's tough right now having that many teams. But I think the future changes are going to be good for us.
So 80 teams and then potentially splitting into 2 divisions and like you said, less games. we only play 13 here, and we do a 8-game regular season now, and then our cross district first round is week 9. So first round playoffs is week 9. We have a 5-round playoff, but 8 games in a regular season. So that is interesting. So then when do you guys start then?
We usually start about the second week of August.
For the first game, you mean?
And well, that's the first week of practice.
First week,
So
okay,
we'll
yeah.
have that week of practice, and then that next week we'll have a scrimmage that Thursday or Friday, and then that third week after we started, you can either play a 0-week game or you can have a second scrimmage.
Okay.
And so if you do the 0-week game, you have a off week sometime later in the season. And so a lot of teams are starting to go to that just so that way they can go ahead and have a week off to rest and get healthy. Um, some people still want to get that second scrimmage in just to get those extra reps. I can't say that I have a preference either way. I think really probably the biggest thing is just what we have coming back. If we have quite a bit coming back and they know what's going on, 0 week's great. If you're young and inexperienced, I'd rather have that second scrimmage.
So then one other question here about that. So again, 80 teams, and you're going to and potentially split into 2 divisions in Class B, and then you have a Class C. So is there an enrollment cutoff, or how do you know if you are going to be an 8-man team or if you have to go 11-man?
So there's no enrollment cutoff. Um, really, basically, what it's just going to come down to the teams that elect and want to play 8-man, they're going to take the 80 smallest. Now, there's teams playing 11-man right now that have a smaller ADM than us. And so, if they wanted to play 8-man, they can petition to do that. And then whoever the top school is with the largest enrollment is going to get kicked out of 8-man, and they're going to get bumped up to 11-man. And so, really, it's just all about who wants to play 8-man. Because if there's a school that's got 20 less kids than us, they're in. And right now we're sitting at about the 4th or 5th largest. And so if there were 4 or 5 11-man schools that said, hey, we want to play 8-man, we could be looking at jumping back up. But I don't see that happening. I think we're safe where we are.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting though, just because obviously if it were to happen, 4 or 5 teams that were to drop, then you could potentially jump right back into 11-man. That would be an interesting scenario, if you had to teeter that line and jump back and forth, swapping your playbook 8 to 11 each year. Does that ever happen?
It hasn't happened with us. There's a lot of schools around us that's happened to. I don't think it's too much of a big deal to go from 11 to 8. It's the change from going 8 to 11 that I
Okay.
think is a lot.
Yeah. Yep.
Just after being around both of them,
Hmm.
that's my opinion.
Yep.
Just because there's so many differences of you throw those 2 extra linemen out there. There's so many more schemes that can happen, and you throw an extra skill kid. There's just a lot more that teams can do on offense and defense. I think kids transition to the 8-man game easier because you can say, hey, this is like this in 11-man. And a lot of times they're familiar with it. Where if you go from 8 to 11, sometimes they're not familiar just because they haven't seen those kind of things, just because the limited amount of schemes with limited kids.
Yep, I agree. And like you said, they're the limited kids for sure, because now you're taking your 8-man team and you got to add 3 guys that they might not have been starters. Now they got, but so here, let's get into this then. So basically just tell us what's something that separates your program from others, like something you guys do different. What's different about your program?
Well, something not. I don't think it's just about our program necessarily, but our school. We have great participation in everything. Our basketball team is going to have a ton of kids out. Our baseball team, our track team is going to have a ton of kids out. Our kids, most of them are 2 or 3 sport athletes. We don't have a lot of kids that are just 1 sport athletes. And in all the sports that they play, they're highly successful in. And so, I don't know if that's necessarily something that football has done. But our school has that culture of we're going to go be successful and no matter what we're doing. And so I think that makes a huge difference for us. We have some schools around us that are not that way. They might have a really good football team, but they don't care about anything else. Or they might have a good basketball team, but they're not worried about football or baseball or track or any of that. And so I think that culture that we have at our school makes a huge difference because our kids expect to win no matter what they're playing, and they expect to play at a high level and perform at a high level. And so I think that makes a huge difference. And I think that's really where it starts for us. Now, we have some things within our program that I think we do a really good job on. Our kids are committed to being in the weight room, and I think that's made a huge difference. When we first got there, and saying we as in myself and Coach Norton, our head coach, we got there at the same time together. We had high school kids that couldn't bench 135 pounds. Those 45-pound plates just stayed where they were at. There wasn't anybody that was pushing any of them. And now we got eighth graders and seventh graders that can do that. That's just easy weight for high school kids now. And so I think that's made a huge difference of establishing that weight room culture. And then this the having success after we switched has made a huge difference too. And our kids are excited about it now, and I think we build a lot of positive relationships with those kids. Uh, I don't know how necessarily it was before we got there, but and I don't want to say we have an open door policy where those kids can just come in whenever they want. But it seems like they're always trying to find a way to hang out with us and be around us and talk to us. And I think that makes a huge difference. If the kids want to be around you, I think they're a whole lot more likely to be successful, and you're going to have a good program. But if you're not building those relationships with those kids, it's tough. You're going to have a hard time. You're going to have a hard time being successful. You have to build the relationships with those kids, and I think we do a good job of that.
Absolutely. Having kids out, great participation in your school, that is huge because that's going to obviously create competition in every sport. Hopefully, like you said too, that just getting that little taste of success, which you had right when you guys switched to 8-man, that's the goal here is they got a feeling of it, now they want more of it. So hopefully we can keep it going. But here, so then let's switch over here, talk a little bit about your offense here, if you don't mind.
No, I
Um,
don't mind at all.
you just kind of describe like your base offense. I know you were talking about your time there at Thomas Fay Custer and the spread, how that kind of molds into what you kind of currently do a little bit, but just talk a little bit more about your base offense.
Yeah, so we're a base no huddle up tempo offense. We're primarily going to base out of spread looks. The first 3 years of us being an 8-man, our base personnel, uh, I would say would be 01. So we had a big tight end kid that we'd play off the ball, kind of like a wing. He's an off the ball tight end, and then we had three receivers out there. Now one of those guys was really more like a running back guy for us, and eventually we started putting him in the backfield some, and so we'd do some 11 personnel. But for the most part, we've been spread 2 by 2, 3 by 1. Now this year was actually kind of different for us because we used more personnel groupings than we've ever have used. The first few years, I put the best 8 out there, and they stayed out there, and we just got in different formations that they fit. This last year, though, we had, since our numbers were kind of higher than they were some of the other years, we used a lot more different personnel groups and sets. And so at times we would get heavy and we would go 22 personnel. And we put two fullback guys in there, and we put two tight ends in there. And one of those tight ends he really wasn't a tight end. He was 350 pounds and he was 6'6", and he could down block really well. and and so it wasn't a surprise what he was doing, but we'd snap it to our tailback, who was a really good athlete, and just go get 7 guys in front of them, have them blocking. But then we could, very next play, we could jump in 10 personnel, and we could have 3 receivers out there that could, go win one-on-one and have a tailback that could run routes out of the backfield. And so we were real multi-personnel and did a lot of different things last year, but a lot of it starts from spread concepts and ideas.
I love that style of offense. We're very similar. Other than you said up tempo, I'd like to hear more about how you practice an up tempo and what you guys do. So, I mean, is it literally as soon as the play is over, they're already ready for the next play? Could you talk about the up tempo portion of that?
So as soon as the play's over, I'm already signaling formation. And so our kids are seeing formation, they're going and they get lined up before I signal the play. Because sometimes something that we did at Thomas, we'd go line up, see where they were lined up at, and then call the play. And so a lot of times, in 8-man, you don't get as many looks as 11-man. You're not having people move pieces around. And so, once we kind of knew where they were at, we could go fast and call it. And so we'd signal formation. I'd let them line up, and then I'd signal the play to them. And all the kids understood it. Every kid would look over towards the sideline and see it. I know some people are different. Some people have quarterback communicate it to the O line. We didn't do that. We had some one word stuff that's been really good for us. Where we just said one word and they knew what that play was and they'd go run it. And then we've had some other calls of just repeat, run the same play again, or flip. So you flip the formation and play, and you run it the other way. Those were great ways to go tempo if you're not really committed to that idea. Because I've talked to some people on that of hey, we're interested in being up tempo, but we're not sure about this. And my advice is to those people, we'll just do one or two one word calls. Say hey, we really like this play, and anytime after a big play, we're going to call this play, or hey, just run the same play again. If you got 15 on it, run it again. Don't overthink it. Just call it again really fast. And if it's something that, maybe like a jet sweep, you ripped off a big gain and you want to run it again, well, flip it and do it to the field now. You don't have to make it more complicated than what it is. And so, we're just trying to get a good play call in fast. We're not worried about the perfect play call slow. Just get something in that's good and get it to them quickly, and you're going to have a lot of success. As opposed to sitting there and really thinking and trying to dial one up, because while you're sitting there thinking, the defense is thinking too. And we've just been way more successful when we're going fast. It seems like anytime we slow down, it's like we mentally lose focus and the defense gains focus. And so we just try to keep it going fast all the time, and that's been good for us.
I like what you're saying, have you have a one-word call and you flip the play or you repeat the play. We actually did that, but are you guys 100% nonverbal other than maybe a few calls, or, I mean, mostly all signals, or?
I wouldn't say that we're completely nonverbal. About half the formations I holler them out, and we're trying to phase that out. We're trying to get to where we're signaling more formations. Uh, but when we first got into 8-man, we'd been so bad, we didn't have just a ton of people at our games. Well, now that we're having success, we have a ton of people showing up now, and that's something about Velma is we have really good fan participation. We have a whole lot of fans there now, and it gets loud. And so we're trying to phase out the verbalizing formations, but all the plays are signals other than the one word calls.
We actually verbalize all our formations also. We have a lot of signals as it is, which I'm sure you do as well, but I couldn't find a way that I thought was a simple enough way to get a formation call in, so I was like, "We'll just yell it." I don't even care if they know our formation call.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if they know, they're going to see what you're lined up in.
Mhm.
And so we've never been worried about that.
You ever study Gus Malzahn or his up-tempo stuff at all? Is that
Yeah, I've looked into it. Um,
And I read his book about the no huddle, no hurry up, no huddle, and what he ran at Shiloh Christian in high school before he went into college. But talk about that. I guess that gets me thinking of the practice plan. Do you guys? I mean, I'm assuming you guys practice like you play, so you're running and you're going nonstop fast in practice as well.
yeah, it's pretty quick. The individual times we slow it down to probably keep them, a little fresher. Teams where we really pick it up and we go fast, and we try to record practice if we can.
Mhm.
As long as we're not having bad weather or anything, we're going to try to film it. And so we'll film practice. And so during that team period, we're just going fast and we're not too worried about mistakes. And so, if a kid messes up and he needs to be talked to, pull him out, but put somebody in there for him. And typically I don't even want that. It's just, hey, he made a mistake. We'll correct it tomorrow on film.
Mhm.
And so we just try to keep things moving and keep it going quick. And I script it because otherwise I'll go too many plays. I don't want to go too many and try to run their legs off. And so I'll usually go 20, 25 plays. I feel like that's usually a pretty good number for us right there. Um, and we don't do just a ton of conditioning after that. I know some people probably think, oh man, you need to just go run some more if you're going to be going faster in games. But I think really the best conditioning for those kids is just playing games. I don't care how many times you run your lineman, they're gonna have to just play their way into shape. There's no way you can go get a 270-pound guard to be in shape from running in practice.
Yeah.
Now I think there's ways you can help that, of in the game of, offensive line going one way, you can help them with things like that. But when it comes to practice, you're not going to make that kid run enough in practice to be in shape. There's a reason he's 270 pounds, and it's not because he's a marathon kid, you
Yeah.
know. So there's certain parts of that you have to work out. But I think the biggest thing that if people want to do that is film your team periods and go fast, so your kids learn how to go fast. Because it's a lot easier to slow them down than it is speed them up. And I heard someone saying this one time: if you go 100 miles per hour, 80 miles per hour feels slow. But if you're used to going 60 and you try to go 80, that feels fast. So we try to make things as fast as possible. So then in the game, it's like, oh man, this is slow. And but if you're used to going slow, and then all of a sudden, hey guys, we're gonna mash down on the gas, it's like, whoa, this is out of control. This just feels wild and crazy, and we don't want them to feel that way.
So you kept saying, I mean, you film practice. How do you film? Do you guys use like an end zone cam and just film the whole practice, or you break out your phone and film a few like individual drills or team sessions, or how do you film practice?
We've done it a couple different ways. Gosh, I wish we had an end zone cam. That would be awesome. Uh, I'll use my phone for some individual drills, and maybe some like group like stuff.
Mhm.
But whenever we get to team, we use a drone, and
Okay.
that's been an awesome investment for us. It's a whole lot cheaper than an end zone camera. End zone cam is about 5,000, a drone's about 500. And so we can do that. And in the battery life, you can get about 30 minutes out of it, which is more than enough time for us and team if we're going fast. The only problem that we might run into is if it's a windy day, it won't stay up as long if it's windy. And the drone we have is real lightweight. And so it'll start taking off on us once we get it so high. And so in Oklahoma, you get those days where it's windy. And so sometimes you just got to go, well, we're not going to get filmed today. But anytime it's nice and we can film, we're going to have it up in the air.
Yeah, I've looked into drones and I went to McPherson College and watched one of their spring game practices here in Kansas, and they had a drone. He showed it to me. I mean, that was a perfect angle, not just for runs, but also for passing game, and even defensemen. I mean, it was just yeah, it was perfect. And we have an end zone cam, and we've used it a few times at practice, but it's just a hassle to set it up. Whereas, like, yeah, if we got a drone, just turn that baby on and yeah, shoot it up. That's my next investment. Try to get a
Yeah.
drone,
The
but
drone's the way to go. The end zone cam, like you said, it's too much setting up. And then it's easy to recruit, some managers when you have a drone because
yeah,
you go in there and you
nobody
say,
wants
hey,
to run that.
yeah, who wants to go fly the drone? They
Yeah,
all want to do it. Now you got them all over there fighting for it. And now you got all these managers out, so now you got all the help you need.
yeah,
And so, you go, hey, you can't fly the drone today, but you can spot the ball really fast in our team periods.
yeah.
So I'm going to have you run around and spot the ball. And so,
Work them in.
maybe
That's
tomorrow you fly the drone.
yep, exactly. So here, coach, let's talk a little about the defensive side of the ball. So kind of tell us a little bit about Oklahoma pass coverage. You guys mostly see man or you see a lot of zone in coverage in Oklahoma? What do you guys see more?
So we see a good mix of both. I think it really just depends on whatever front they're trying to play. Every now and then we'll see the 3-3 teams, and they're going to play man, and a lot of times they're going to try to play pretty tight man. There's not a lot of them that play off for whatever reason. I don't know why, but they always want to get up in your face, and they're going to try to bring pressure, and it seems like they're going to try to bring the mic all the time for whatever reason. But and then every now and then we'll see. Well, more than every now and then we see quite a few 3-2 teams, and they're all kind of different. Probably the most popular deal is they'll play like we call it cover two. The safety is going to roll over to one side and play a deep half. The corner is going to squat and play flat, and then on the other side, the corner is going to play a deep half, and they're going to try to get one of the backers underneath him to play the flats over there, and then the other linebackers playing kind of a middle hole, and so you get this two deep, three under look.
Hmm.
But then we've seen some of the teams that are 3-2, and they try to basically play like a cover three, where it's three guys that are deep and then two guys underneath. And so we see a mixture of everything. Um, and a lot of times we're going to really try to dictate certain coverages with our sets. And so, if we know that you're going to get in a certain coverage in like 3-by-1, well, we'll get some 3-by-1 to force a look that we want. Or if we know that you're going to roll a secondary one way, well, we'll set certain receivers a certain way, and so you know there's a lot of games that we try to play to dictate certain coverages. So just because a team's they're a cover two team, we might not get in sets that allow them to be in cover two. We might get in a ton of trips and force them into cover three or something like that, or getting 2-by-2 and force them into playing man, or or something like that. Our semifinal game, we got in trips a ton because that team was a cover two team, and we just forced them into cover three and took advantage of it. And we threw for 270 that game. Now our starting tailback was out too, so that kind of made a difference too. I probably wouldn't have minded seeing cover two if we still would have had him. But when he was out, we had to use our receivers and use those guys, and so we dictated what we wanted and could take advantage of it.
And I know me and you have emailed back and forth talking about choice concepts a little bit. Could you talk about maybe one of your choice concepts or how you attack certain coverages, or even just talk about the primary pass concepts you guys use or how many you use? Talk any concept.
Yeah, so our passing game, it's kind of evolved throughout the years of us being an 8-man. The probably the most consistent thing that we used, at least from like a choice perspective, we used like a quick choice where it was they could run a 5-yard hitch, and if you couldn't run a 5-yard hitch, you were going vertical. And so we did that a lot out of 2-by-2, and we would do it some out of 3-by-1, but it was mostly out of 2-by-2, and that was really good for us for a long time. And we've kind of gotten away from that just because we've started using more one back sets, just because we've had some of those kids that were tailback kids. And so this last year, we started playing around a little bit more with the deeper choice routes. We haven't fully committed to them by any means, but all the quick choice stuff has been really good to us for a long time now, and so there's so much space out there that kids can take advantage of. And so, we try to give them options and let them get open, and we feel like a lot of our kids can go win one on one. And so, I always like having some sort of option route, whether it's a deeper one or a quicker one. Either way, we still like to give our kids options. And then 2 years ago, we ran quite a few of the air raid passing concepts. We threw mesh, we threw sail, snag, we threw all of it. Um, and I don't know and if it was any better than throwing the quick stuff. I mean, there were certain things that we had a lot of success on. Probably the best one was smash. We would roll out and throw smash a ton. That was really good for us, and we could dress that up a lot of different ways. Um, snag, we completed a lot, but I never really liked it. It seemed like we always threw the back, and our two receivers are out there running routes, and then our tailbacks trying to go, 1-on-2 basically. And I just felt like it'd been better to throw a swing screen and let those guys go and block as opposed to doing that. So, I think it's easy to get caught up on some of these passing concepts and go, oh man, I really like this, and you can overthink some stuff in a hurry in 8-man. And mesh was good for us, but people would see us kind of start tightening our alignment, and they were trying to take our kids' heads off. And there were times where it was good for us, and then there were times where I went, I don't know if I really like that. And so, and we've tried mesh a couple different ways. We've tried it the traditional way where you have the number one running that corner route, and then you have your two guys crossing in the back swinging that way, and so you kind of get that 3-level flood. But then we tried the kind of the newer way that the 11-man schools are doing it, where you have the outside guy running that OTB route, the over the ball,
Mm-hmm.
where he's sitting about 9 yards, and you're running the tailback on the rail route. And we tried that, and it never worked as well as what I wanted it to. The thought process behind it was our tailback was really fast, and so I thought, oh man, this will be awesome. Well, these corners will just go chasing, and we'll be throwing sixers on the rail, and the corner always zoned off, and we always threw it underneath. And the guy that always caught it was probably the least receiver out of our four. And so I really didn't care for that too much because I designed it for probably our best athlete to get the ball, and then the worst one of our kids, which he's still a good kid, but you want to get the ball in your athlete's hands. And so when they were forcing it to that guy, I really didn't like that as much. But the option routes are a good way to force it to those guys. If you got a guy that can go win one-on-one, I think that's really the way to go, is just go get them one-on-one and let them win. By the end of last season, we got to where we were just, we would max protect some stuff, and just let guys go one-on-one. And our completion percentage skyrocketed, and our efficiency and everything was just so much better. And it was just because we were throwing one-on-one and just letting kids go win. So I think we could get too complicated at times. And so, that's something I'm always trying to remember on passing game is just, keep it simple and let kids go win on matchups, because you can over scheme it in a hurry.
So anytime you can give a kids options where we can take advantage every play of what the defense is doing, I think, yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, why not? It's almost like basketball. If they're running a
Yeah,
zone defense, why would we run a man offense? Run what
exactly.
beat what they're doing. So then I want to talk kind of in this. I'm going off script a lot here, but I'd like to ask about like how do you teach quarterback progression? We are pretty much true progression, left to right, or right to left. We use the Dubmatics, the R4 system, but I actually call it R3, where we're rhythm, read, and run. But I'd like to hear how do you teach progression within your concept?
Yeah, so it's funny that you brought that up with the Dubmatic stuff, because we actually tried using quite a bit of that one year of the rhythm, read, rush, release, and we're real similar on some of that of some things are left to right or right to left, but then some things are top down, where we're high to low. And so typically when we've taught them in the past is whatever your first read is, when you hit the last step of your drop, you're throwing it.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's not there, you're hitching up to your second read, and on that hitch, if you like it, you're throwing it, and your feet take you through your progression. And I think that's probably the biggest coaching point of no matter, whether it's a left to right, right to left, or a high to low, or maybe even low to high, it doesn't matter. Quarterbacks need to know that their feet take them through the progression, and it keeps them from getting stuck on a certain receiver. And so that's how we've taught it, and it's been good for us. Um, on the choice stuff, you kind of get away from that a little bit, because sometimes you're just working that matchup and you're letting them stare it down. But a lot of times when we're doing that, we know it's one-on-one, and we're not worried about other guys getting involved. But I think if we were going to be a 2x2 or 3x1 team, and we were going to throw a lot of concepts, we're going to use a lot of that, progression based footwork of, hey, this is your first read. If it's not there, hitch up to the second one. You know, if that's not there, hitch up to your third one. And typically by the time you've gotten to that third one, either you've got the ball out or your quarterback needs to take off and go.
Yep.
And so I think the hard four stuff's a good way to teach it, but gosh, there's a lot to that. And I haven't had just a ton of quarterbacks that are, I don't want to say they're dumb. I'm not trying to, say anything about their intelligence, but it's a lot to think about and a lot to remember. And we're just trying to play fast sometimes, and I feel like it slows us down mentally. And I think Dub's done a fantastic job on it, but I think you got to ask yourself, are there better ways, more efficient ways to do things? And I think for us, there is. Now, some teams, there's a lot of teams that use it, and that's great, and it works good for them, and good for them. But for us, sometimes it can get a little too complicated that way.
Here, so just kind of talk a little bit about your team from this past year. I know you said you made it to the semifinals. So kind of just talk about this season, what you learned most about your team, and just talk a little bit about this year.
So we started off 2-3, and we played some really good teams, but two of those we probably should have won. We beat ourselves. We didn't play very good, and got off to a slow start, but we learned a lot about ourselves. And part of that was we had the previous 3 years, we had the same quarterback all 3 of those years. And he was a Division I athlete, and he was really good. And so we really didn't have to change a whole lot. And we knew that he was going to be the man. And everything was based around him offensively and really defensively too. And when he left, it was kind of a learning experience for everybody of, okay, who's going to step up, who's going to be the man. And so it took a little bit of time to figure out who's going to step up and who's going to lead, and who needed to play well. But after those first 5 games, we started to get things figured out. And after that, in Oklahoma, there's a 45-point mercy rule. And so after halftime, once you get up 45 points, it's over. 4 out of our 5 district opponents, we 45'd. And so, and I think we had a shutout 4 out of those 5 games, I believe. I mean, we started playing really well. And then we started playoffs, and we just continued that momentum, and things really got to rolling at the right time. And we started playing good football late, which I think is huge, and it's not necessarily bad to play good football early, but you really want to be playing your best football late. So first round, we played a team that really we felt like was better than where they were seeded. So we were a 1 seed out of our district, and they were a 4 seed, but they had dropped a couple games that they were up 2 touchdowns late. And, they probably should have been about a second place team or at least third place team in that district. And they ended up being fourth. So it felt like our first round was kind of a tough draw. But, like a lot of their other games, I think they had some problems and they fell apart, and we got out on them early. And so we 45 those guys right at the start of the second half. And then our second round, we drew a team that was pretty talented. And right off the bat, they were doing some good things, but it's kind of the same thing as the first round. They just, it looked like they were ready to go to the gym. And so we got out on them, and we 45 them before the second half. And then the third round, our quarterfinal game, we drew Regent Prep, which, it's a pretty popular name in 8-man football, coached by Adam Bishop. And he's done a ton of clinics and stuff, and he's a heck of a coach. I mean, he's done some unbelievable things. And he was one of the main guys that I was hitting up right off the bat when I got into 8-man. of just trying to learn some offense. And if anybody wants to learn how to score points, that's the guy to talk to right there. He does a phenomenal job. And we were fortunate to beat those guys. I don't remember the score exactly. I think it was something like 40-26 or something like that. But their starting quarterback got hurt our first offensive series, and they actually got the ball to start the game. And their quarterback first play, he took off scrambling and went 50 yards and scored on one play. So when that kid went out, that was huge for them because he was kind of the guy that made them go. But we lost our starting tailback and our backup tailback, and both those kids started on defense. And so we ended up winning, but no matter who come out of that deal, both teams were beat up. And so then the next week we matched up with Laverne, who's one of the top dogs in Oklahoma, and they're an unbelievable program. They're doing a lot of great things right now, and I think if we're healthy, we have a chance to beat those guys. But just some things didn't go our way, and we played with them really well. But it was tough, and we just made too many mistakes. And at the end of the day, you can't do that. And so we had our chances, but but all in all, though, it was a good experience for our kids that are coming back, and they learned, and now they think that, hey, we belong to in those top tier programs, that we're one of them top dogs, like a Laverne or Shattuck, that before this season, I think our kids kind of thought we belonged, but they didn't know. And now that we made it to the semifinals and competed with those guys, I think our kids now know that hey, we can be really good.
Laverne ended up winning it all then?
They end up winning it all.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, the team that they beat worse than what they beat us, and so our
Yeah.
kids were going, oh my gosh, if we just would have found a way to beat those guys, we definitely would have won it. I don't know if that's true or not, but we would have had a good shot.
Either way, great experience for your returning players, to compete with them and have a chance to beat them, and obviously they won, so it sinks in the end thinking, "Oh, yeah, what if we'd have won that?" But going right off of that, let's talk about next year. What do you look forward to most going into next season?
So we got a lot of young skill guys that are coming back, and that are really explosive. And so, I'm thinking we can really utilize those guys and hit some big plays on offense. One of the things that's going to be at least a challenge. We're going to replace two guys on the O line that are going to be some young guys that are a little inexperienced, but I think they have a lot of potential. So I think if we develop those guys and can get them some quality reps early in the season, I think that they have the potential to be better than the guys that we had last year. And so, I feel like the sky's the limit. As long as we can stay out of their way, you know, and we can get something out of those guys. And I'm excited. The kids are excited. We just finished up spring ball, and things were going good, and guys were flying around, and so it's a fun group. They work hard, they get after it, and I'm excited to see what we can do next season.
So last question then, just what's your biggest piece of advice to any upcoming football coaches?
I think the biggest thing is just continue to learn and always be studying. I'm a film junkie. I'm going to try to watch all the film I can watch and look at playbooks. And I tell our kids, if you're not growing, you're dying. Each day you need to become better, because the moment you stop trying to become better, someone else is still working, and they're going to become better than you. And so if you'll continue just to work and learn and study, you're going to become better as a coach. And I think if you do that, it also helps you with connecting with other coaches too. I went and visited with the school the other day, and I had studied some of their system. Well, I knew the lingo, and so it was easy to visit with them and kind of get deeper and learn more, as opposed to if I hadn't studied the system and I didn't know, well, then I'd be sitting there asking questions about kind of the base stuff and not getting as deep. And so I think it's good to try to just study as much as you can, and gain and grow, and just learn. Don't ever stop learning.
Well, Coach, I really appreciate you doing this and making time to do this with me. So glad we found time to actually make it work. So thanks a lot for joining me, Coach.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it.
And that's going to do it for this episode of the 8-Man Breakdowns podcast. If you ever have a question for me, feel free to comment down below on this video or visit my bio to shoot me an email. If you've learned anything or enjoy any of these videos, please click subscribe and check out some of my other videos right here. And as always, guys, thanks for tuning in.